What's the one thing Nikola Jovic can focus on this season to be a more impactful player? Well, he offered some insight recently, and it's not what you might expect. Plus, the Heat are upgrading the arena, and we break down the changes on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your everyday podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com, here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members, and the best way to support the show is to leave a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app and subscribe on YouTube. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We'll talk about where Nikola Jovic is working to improve his game and a potential trade deadline target for the Heat in a second. But let's start by talking about these new arena upgrades, David. They look pretty great. Gone is that sunburst scoreboard. In is the new fireball. You wrote about this for Forbes. $50 million in upgrades to the arena. We'll talk about the scoreboard, some new system lighting, audio system upgrades, some stuff to some of the seating arrangement. But the headline here is the scoreboard.
Yeah, that is the focal point there. And it's a unique, one-of-a-kind display there. So just like as they had the Medusa, what they refer to as the tentacle display that had been there for much of the building's history, this is going to be a completely different piece of art here. It's going to be surrounded by 4 new huge scoreboards. So one of the smallest, if not the smallest scoreboard in the NBA is going to be replaced by one of the biggest. It's ginormous. They've got these 4 huge scoreboards, and then they've got the LED fixtured all over on this fireball. So as you pointed out, it's going to be something that they can tinker with, and that's what they're most excited with, because right now there's dozens of little screens inside that fireball, so they're not even sure what they can really do with it. They can look at and put different images there, singular images, multiple images, one larger image, and it's something that they're going to continue to tinker around with. I got the feeling in my conversation too that the NBA hasn't provided a lot of guidance either, because this is so unique. They've never done this before and dealt with anything like this, so they're not quite sure how they'll allow the Heat to go and use this actual piece of equipment that they had developed. But the Heat team itself is very excited about all the different possibilities. They know
I've
they're
got
going
some
to start
ideas.
ramping up. Yeah, I'm sure you do. And then, on top of that, they're also going to be unveiling it on October 7th for the upcoming red, white, and pink game. Obviously, that's the charity scrimmage. That's with all the members of the team, or at least the ones that are going to be available. They'll be participating with all proceeds going to cancer research. As always, it's an annual event, but that's where you'll see these things on display for the very first time. So it's exciting, and everybody involved with the team is very excited about the various changes and how it's going to continue to evolve and grow over the course of the season.
And then the first preseason home game, October 10th against the Atlanta Hawks, which is when most people will probably go to that because that's an actual Heat game. And so, yeah, this will be unveiled, and I'm sure they'll experiment with tinker. But I'm already looking at that fireball, and I'm like, okay, so it's red in some of the photos that they've provided in the press release there.
Yeah.
For playoff games, that could be white, right? For like the white hot Heat thing, it could just be a giant white fireball, right? Like that's easy enough to do. You can match it with like the Heat culture uniforms with that brighter red. Maybe you could do a brighter red. I think, and I don't know if they have the capabilities to do this, but you can go full like NBA. What's the name of the video game where they go on they go on fire when they've hit like a few
NBA Jams.
NBA Jam. I don't know why I forgot that. People are gonna kill me in the comments for that. NBA Jam. If like Jimmy Butler's on fire, you could just put Jimmy Butler like in flames on that thing. I don't know. It's like Jimmy Butler's on fire. I'm like, that would be kind of cool.
They likened it to a Sphere in Las Vegas, and that's where obviously if you haven't seen what that looks like on the inside or on the outside, but this is basically a smaller representation of that with all these screens that can work in unison or to provide individual images. So it's a really special thing. And they made the changes upwards of $50 million for the total budget, not just the scoreboards, which they started working on last year. So they had implemented those scoreboards on the edges around. Yes, exactly. So that was last year's improvement, but now this has 4 scoreboards around the fireball itself. And that is the official nickname that the team is calling it. They're calling it Fireball. So let's go with it.
Cool.
If they call
it's the
one
logo.
Medusa,
It's the
Yeah,
logo
yeah, no,
embodied, right? It kind of feels like this should have been before the Medusa. It should have been this. Um,
I don't think the
so
technology was available in 1999, but still
yeah, it could
impressive.
have just been like a giant pinata though in the middle, and then you could have
Nice.
upgraded it with the technology, you know.
Yeah,
But
nice.
no, I love this. Look, it really that scoreboard needed to go. Right, I know it's iconic, and I associate like really like the big three era with that all the time.
Yeah.
With that Medusa, that's sort of what it is. But it had to go. That like you go around other arenas across the country, and you already mentioned it was one of the smaller scoreboards in the league, no doubt about it. I mean, I could barely even see it from press row sometimes, like parts of the scoreboard. And so,
Yeah.
you know, you think about what the Clippers got going on with their sort of 360 thing, and what
Mm.
Chase Center has done, what Denver has done with their state of the art scoreboard, which I was able to see during the 2023 finals when I visited Denver for those games. And I'm just like, oh my God, like all of them are better than ours.
Hmm.
Like they're all better than ours. And you know, it makes sense. The Heat moved into the building. They started making these things in 1999. It's one of the older buildings
It
in the
is.
league. And
Yeah.
they do need to continue to make renovations because they're not getting rid of that plot of land, right? Like this is
Right.
not going to be a situation where they leave Miami and then end up moving into North Miami somewhere near where the Dolphins play or something. Like they're going to keep that plot of land. That is iconic. That is fundamental to what it is the Heat do.
Yeah.
And they're not going to tear down the building, and nor should they. So they have to continue making upgrades. This is probably a couple of years overdue, but hey, better late than never. And if you're going to do it, you got to nail it. And this looks like they nailed it. Can I tell you what I'm really excited for though?
Yes.
Part of the new lighting system, and I thought this kind of went
Mm.
underreported in the press release there. They are
Yeah.
changing the way they do the lighting, where
Yeah.
it's gonna be like Madison Square Garden, where it's gonna be what they call like the boxing style, where the
Yeah.
basketball court is illuminated, right? The basketball court's gonna be lit up, but then it's sort of dimmed in the lower and upper bowls where the fans sit, which has not been the case in Kaseya Center in the past. Everything's just been lit, kind of standard lit. This is gonna be like the court is going to be illuminated and everything else is going to be shadowed out a little bit, so it's going to look really cool. I don't know if I'm sure a lot of our fans have probably been to MSG and seen games there, but that's part of the magic of seeing a game at Madison Square Garden, which I think is one of the best places to watch a game live. I just think it is. And part of it is like sort of the lighting process, and I think this is going to do that, plus the fireball in the middle with it is just going to be like, I think, this kind of crazy viewing experience.
It does sound that way, and I'll be honest. I was kind of guilty of underreporting it myself. Like I barely touched on the boxing ring aspect. I just mentioned the overall lighting changes because I don't know. I'm a little hesitant about it, to be honest with you. I'm not
Really?
sure how it's going to work. I just feel like it's going to look cool for the court aspect of it, but I just wonder. Already, it feels like walking through the steps of the arena is always precarious enough with people having drinks, and there's always a crowd and
Well, it's not
everything
going
else
to be
like that.
dark.
Like it'll be darker, and I don't think you need that. That to be 100% honest with you. I'm just telling you. This is my own personal view.
I think
This
you're
is not
talking just
representative.
you. I think you do. I
No,
don't think
no,
you need it.
100%, 100%. But I'm a little. Once I see it, I'll be like, all right, cool. And it's gonna be louder, and I don't know that I need that too. Like I've had times there where I've been in the arena for the pregame intro, and crowd noise gets exceedingly loud, and it's like this is loud enough already. I know I sound like a curmudgeonly old man here,
You
and
really
that's
do.
fine.
Okay.
I'll own it.
It's
I
too
don't care.
loud.
Not my $50 million.
How's
Not my
this for
arena
audio
either.
upgrades? Let's make it quieter. How about quieter
Yes.
audio upgrades?
Yeah. Have you ever seen like an old game? Like it's nothing. Like they used to have like an organ player in the background there, and there was just guys in
That's
suits
what we
chain
want.
smoking.
Fine, get rid of the system. Just get us a piano player in the corner.
Yes. Get an
Organ
organ
player.
player somewhere in the upper rows.
Pay
Have
him
everybody in
$20
suits.
an
Yeah.
hour. How's
There
that for an arena?
That's the upgrade you need. It's an upgraded downgrade.
The Hawks still do that. The Hawks still have the organ
Yes,
player, I think,
I know.
right?
He's iconic though. He's iconic.
Yeah.
And also,
How much
I
can
know
we pay that
biggest-
guy?
Yeah,
It's like we'll double what the Hawks are paying you.
They're also changing the lower bowl seats. They're going to be 21,000 new retractable seats, and that's to accommodate updated walkways from
Yeah, that matters.
the home and visitor.
That doesn't matter for the fans. It matters. I'm actually happy for you and I because it does feel a little crowded there, and if they retract that, and then when the players come in, that's safety, and I get that. But like,
Well, it's for the fans that are used to being like in the Ameren Center and watching the players walk by them as they're kind of drunkenly cheering or booing against them, I suppose. They won't be able to see those players anymore. It'll be much more secluded and safe for the players to go directly from the locker room to the court, and
Yeah.
they won't have to pass the fans as much as they do nowadays.
the other thing I'm
or
thinking
last
about the
season.
fireball too is when they do the pyrotechnics to start the games. That
Yes.
fireball is going to be part of that, right? Like, I think we're going to get a whole new. We're probably going to get a new. This is not me reporting. You're the one reporting on all this, but I would assume we're going to get like a refreshed pyrotechnic kind of deal at the beginning of the games. It's kind of been the same sort of thing for the last few years. They've updated it, here and there. I'm sure the people in charge will be like, "What are you talking about? We change it all the time." And I'm like, whatever. But it'll probably be a little bit new to incorporate the fireball, which would be really cool. So really excited to see it. Obviously, we'll see it for the pink, red, and white game. I always forget what order the colors are in, but the one that goes to cancer research, and then the preseason we'll see it there too. So really excited to check that out. Let's move on. Nikola Jovic has ideas for how he wants to improve next season. We'll talk about that next, and whether or not it's even realistic. Coming up on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Listen, it's been a rough weekend for a lot of Dolphins fans. I know that game against the Seahawks was not fun to watch, but now's an opportunity to catch up on all the other NFL games around the league, or maybe if you just want to watch them over the next few weeks while Tua returns to health, this is a good opportunity, because when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out all the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Now make sure to go to FanDuel.com and download America's favorite sportsbook today. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. There's no offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed or entertained as Locked On NBA. It's available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Nikola Jovic was talking with Ira Winderman of the South Florida Sun-Sentinel, and he said that he's working on to improve his low post skills. Here's the quote. When I have a smaller guy on me, I have to punish them. That's something I think will help our team a lot. So I would say that's the main thing for me, other than still being able to spread the floor and everything I already did. Being able to punish every mismatch, I think, is a really important part of that game for me. And that's what I'll keep working on and try to do as much as I can. End quote, David. Nikola Jovic, trying to punish the little guys. What do you think?
I think it's a great headline. I understand the mentality, and it kind of ties in together with what we theorized when we talked about Nico a couple of weeks ago and what he can do to upgrade this overall temper, aggression, things that he can bring to this new year, where we already know the skills are there. It's about taking it, harnessing it, hardening it, and making it, reach another level so that he could be a much more impactful player. And I guess, yes, the low post is going to be part of that, at least being able to use his improved physicality and things of that sort. But how many post-ups were actually there last year for Nico so that he could have, quote unquote, punished these guys a little bit more? And how does that have an overall impact on an offense that has already been sluggish enough? Going to the low post, it works for Jimmy because Jimmy's really good at it, but it's also bogged down the offense to a huge degree. And I'm not necessarily sure that I want Nico posting up guys. Like, I want him being more of a spot-up shooter and being able to excel in that regard, or to use his speed in fast break opportunities and transition baskets and things of that sort, not punishing the occasional point guard. Like, I know that's going to be an aspect, but what are we looking at here? Maybe not even one possession per game. I can't imagine that Nico's going to have that many more post-ups.
You can't even track a post-up. Like, NBA.com will track post-ups for various players. They don't even have one tracked for Nikola Jovic from last year. It wasn't part of his game. And so I agree with you. It's a cool headline, but to expect Nico to go from not doing it ever to doing it even sometimes to doing it even occasionally, it's not very realistic. I also, when I read this, I don't think of Nikola Jovic being a post player all of a sudden. Like, that's not how I'm looking at this. I don't think that the Heat, you're right, they're not going to start feeding Nico in the post, especially if you've got one of Jimmy and Bam on the court at all times, which the Heat tend to do. Right. Those are your post-up hubs, right? They're not going to be like, you know what, Bam, you go to the corner and we'll post up Nico. So we'll put the worst three-point shooter in the corner and the worst post-up player in the post. Like, that's not good offense, right? That's not a good play design. So I don't see that happening. The difference between, actually doing a post-up and just punishing a smaller player, there's a little bit of a nuanced difference there. And I do think that when Nico gets in transition, going straight to the basket, if there's a point guard in front of him or a smaller player in front of him, or even like, hey, on the cut, if there's a smaller guy on you, instead of kicking it out, just trying to go up and score over him. It's all the stuff we talked about already with Nico. I said the thing that he just needs to change, it's not even a specific skill set. It's just playing with more physicality. That's the thing that I think can get him over the top, whether it's at the post or setting stronger screens or rebounding or whatever it is, just being a physical presence at 6'10". But to me, my takeaway from this also was, if there was any doubt that the Heat are developing Nico as a power forward, that's gone now. Because this doesn't come from Nico. This comes from the coaching staff. Hey, we want you to punish guys that are smaller. If they're on you, go punish them. Right? That's not designing a play to make sure, like a triangle offense, get the entry pass into Nico and let him post up somebody. No. It's just, hey, if somebody happens to be smaller on you because of some sort of switching scheme that the opponent is running or whatever, we're going to feed it to you and you better score in that situation. And I just think that that's the Heat, kind of, again, underscoring, hey, we need you to play more physically.
Now, that's interesting because, when I think about it now, even as you're talking about it, and I hadn't considered this until you brought it up, what if we're going to see more lineups where Nico's at the ostensible one, like where he's playing this sort of point, and you can go with a really big lineup of, let's say, Nico, Jimmy, Jaime, Bam, and Ware. Like that lacks shooting to a certain degree, obviously, but that's a much bigger lineup.
To a degree of zero.
Bam,
there's no
Bam shooting 35% from three, Jimmy shooting 40% from three.
On one game.
It's at least there are opportunities, right? And we know that Khalil can shoot the three as well, although I'm not sure how consistent it'll be. But let's say in this theoretic lineup that you have here, a power lineup, you go with Nico at the one. Who's going to be picking up? It might be the guard. And if that's the case, taking advantage of those opportunities makes a lot of sense. I also thought about it in terms of the officiating. I know I've probably been bringing this bell a lot more than most people, but the changes I thought were significant last year in terms of a lot less foul calls. And after what we saw from, international FIBA rules basketball and the Olympic tournament and things of that sort, I wonder whether those rules will still be as lax as they were last season. And if that's the case, then that probably is an advantage for Nico, because I could see a lot of offensive foul call baiting. Like, they're going to get a lot of flops, a lot of, pulling the chair and stuff like that. But if Nico's able to use his physicality and his skill set, and he's able to make contact with a smaller player guarding him, at least he won't be getting called for the foul as often as he would have been prior to last season when they made those changes. So that's how I kind of viewed it. But I'm curious because for him to say this publicly, like, certainly backs up your point that he's hearing it from the team. I just also question the necessity of it, especially when Miami's offense has already been so sluggish, and I don't know that contributes.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think it's going to be more opportunistic. It's not going to be we're playing out of the post. We're not going to slow down the pace for you to go punish small players. It's, hey, it's just, hey, being opportunistic. If this is where you are on the court and you've got a smaller guy on you, just shoot over him, score over him, lean into him, be physical. If you get an offensive rebound and there's a smaller guy on you, don't kick it out. Go back for the tip in, go back for the putback. Those are the things that's what I kind of see. I think we kind of make a lot out of, they want him playing in the low post. I'm like, no. I would be very shocked if we started.
I want him to clear out again. Clear out.
Right.
Just dump it into him as he's going up against Tyrese Maxey and watch him go to work and dunking all over him. That would be great,
But that's what I'm saying. Like if he's under the basket and Maxey's there, then that's where you feed it to him. But like you're not designing. Like, I think that's more like happenstance. I don't know if I'm explaining myself right, but
I get
designing the play to get to that point. It's just how like the basketball plays unfold. Like the play you design and the play that actually happens very rarely are the same thing. And just weird stuff happens, and there's a tip or there's a deflection, and then all of a sudden Jovic just got the ball in the low block and there's a small guy behind him. Yeah, I don't know.
Like Terry setting a screen, maybe, and then kind of getting the switch that way.
Yeah,
it's
but like
what has
fast
to happen,
pace.
right? It's either Terry
Nico
or Tyler.
And that's not a post up,
maybe.
Right? Nico maybe has the ball on the perimeter. Terry or Tyler set a screen. Duncan Robinson, one of these guys set a screen, and then Jovic just goes at him and punishes those guys. Like, I'm in there for that. No back to the basket stuff. We don't need him back to the basket, but just LeBron James being like LeBron. Just go at him, spin move, lay it in. I don't need to compare Nico.
I was
to
hoping
LeBron
a little
James,
bit of a little dream shake here and there, a little Olajuwon maybe being incorporated.
Throw some
Is
elbows.
that asking for too much?
Yeah, I mean, look, Nico's gotten stronger every year. It's his third year. He's getting stronger, bigger frame. Maybe he comes in looking like LeBron James and Karl Malone or whatever, and he's just like, I'm just going to throw elbows. I'm going to start punishing guys.
Nice.
Probably not. All right. Could the Heat revisit an old trade target if a certain East rival season goes south? One NBA insider mentioned it as a possibility. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your car riding smoothly. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits to LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive with eBay Motors at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply, and eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. If you're new to us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Also, make sure you are following us on your favorite podcast app. 5-star ratings and reviews, always appreciated. All right, David, so last week, Zach Lowe said on his podcast that he wouldn't be surprised if the Heat looped back to Damian Lillard if this season doesn't go well for the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, this started making the rounds on social media. Zach Lowe's actually mentioned the Damian Lillard possibility a couple of times on his show, so I don't know why it kind of started making traction on social media this weekend, but hey, here we are, and now we got to talk about it. So it wasn't at all surprising to me that it was mentioned either. It makes total sense. I don't know how you feel about the Milwaukee Bucks going into this season. I think people are kind of underrating them a little bit. They still have Giannis.
Very much so.
Damian Lillard's still awesome, even though he's 34 years old. Chris Middleton kind of just feels like he's due for a healthier season. 88 total games played across the last 2 seasons. Just like, come on, that guy's got to get one healthy season left, right? Maybe not. I could be wrong. I mean, his ankles, 2 ankle injuries, 2 ankle surgeries over the last few months. So
definitely the X factor there.
Brook Lopez is getting up there in age. It's easy to make fun of Doc Rivers, but that guy's a regular season wins machine. His issues are in the playoffs, but not necessarily in the regular season. So I still think this is going to be like one of the top 3 seeds in the East. And so I bring that up only because if they are one of the top 3 seeds in the East, it's difficult to imagine them shaking it up to the degree in the regular season before the trade deadline. Now, maybe next summer if things don't work out in the playoffs or whatever. That said, even Giannis now, everybody is on the other side of 30. Like, Brook Lopez is 35, 36 years old. Lillard is 34. Middleton is an old 32. Giannis is even 30 years old at this point.
Yeah.
Maybe the regular season doesn't go how they imagine. And it's clear in January and February that, hey, you know, Middleton's hurt again. Brook Lopez isn't the player. We're just not even close to competing. We need to shake things up. We need to get younger. Nobody's going to trade anything of value for Brook Lopez at this stage. We can't trade Chris Middleton because he's hurt, so nobody's going to give us any value in return. Obviously, we're not trading Giannis because he's the franchise player, so we got to trade Damian Lillard. And I do think if the Bucks were to shop Lillard, he would still be valuable. I think there's teams, but even in addition to the Miami Heat, that would be like, you know what, Damian Lillard makes some sense for us. Let's go ahead and kind of make this move, and maybe they can get younger and sort of retool around Giannis that way. But I wouldn't be against it. Would you?
No, I'm against talking about it a little bit because it just seems very, very premature. But I understand that it's a topic that some fans would want to hear about. I don't even know that as much as I think Middleton is the X factor for Milwaukee, and Lopez is probably going to continue to age a little bit just because he's a 7-footer, and those typically age a lot more quickly than
we've already seen
other
it. I mean,
players.
Even now, he's not the player he was.
He was never nimble of foot, but he's not definitely a lot slower now than he was even 2 seasons ago. So it happens for 7-footers. But to me, I think what it would hinge on is Giannis sustaining a significant injury. And I don't wish this on him or anything like that. And I don't mean to even put it out there, but like if he sustains an injury and that season's clearly not going anywhere, then I could understand the rationale of wanting to move on from him a little, just because, well, he's older, he's getting paid a lot of money, and your championship window may not be open this season. It won't be open this season if Giannis is hurt, and it might not be open the season beyond that, depending on the severity of whatever injury that I'm talking about in this theoretical situation. But that's the only way I could see it, because even a team without Middleton and with an aging Lopez, and as long as they have Dame and Giannis there, I think that's a team that wins a lot of games. And I am right there with you. I think they are being somewhat underrated. I think they're going to be one of the top 4 teams in the East, and I think they certainly have a chance of being even a top 2. I think that's we've seen that from them in the past, and as much as Doc gets beat up for a lot of the things he does, and it's certainly warranted, he can coach a team to some wins, and I think he will this year too. Unfortunately, like I take no pleasure in saying that, but I think they're going to be a lot better than people expect. And look, that's another way that people do things, is that they're very quick to kind of send you to your grave very early after you've been dominant for as long as the Bucks have. And they've shown weaknesses here and there. Obviously, they haven't been able to come through the postseason. Miami has been a big part of that, and they have some injury issues and things of that sort. And they certainly did not start off last year well with the whole Adrian Griffin hire and all the chaos and everything else like that. But I think a lot of people are writing them off much too quickly, and I think they'll still be a good team.
Yeah.
But again, if we're talking about the pursuit of Dame, it would take something catastrophic along the lines of a Giannis injury. But from Miami, I still think there'd be just as much interest. Like, maybe it would have made a lot more sense last year when he was a little bit closer to his prime and still capable of being incorporated into this team and to play at a high level. But despite that, I think they would still love a guy who could probably put up 30 points per game in his sleep. Like we talked last week about the fact that Miami hasn't had a 27 point per game score since LeBron James. Well, guess what? They'd get one right away in Dame Lillard. Like he could still be that type of guy. He's going to get his points. He can foul bait with the best of them. He's going to get his 3-point shot. He could still get to the rim. There's a lot to love about his game, despite the salary, despite the age concerns. And I know a lot of fans already don't even want to hear that, because I'm already hearing a very loud, silent minority, thinking that they want to be younger, that they want to go into this new era, especially if we're talking about Jimmy Butler and his future and everything else like that. Well, Miami has one goal in mind every year, and that's to put themselves in a place to win a championship. And if that's the case, Damian Lillard's acquisition certainly helps them.
He averaged 24 points per game last year. He would have been the leading scorer on the Miami Heat last season, right? And that's not even a lot. Margin. I mean, that was down from that's down from where he tends to be. And he's been very open about this. He's been going through a divorce off the court. He was dealing with the struggles of the trade demand and whether he's going to go to Miami or not. And he said he didn't even work out all summer because he was scared of getting hurt. And if he got hurt, then it would devalue his trade demand. And so he went into last season not in great shape, and it looked like it. So if we're assuming a bounce back year for Damian Lillard, where some of the personal issues and the conditioning issues are further behind him, then I think we can even get maybe a little bit of a bounce back year. Now, I don't think we're ever going to get peak Damian Lillard waving bye-bye to Oklahoma City Thunder in the playoffs anymore, but he's still capable of these moments. His clutch numbers, by the way, were very good last year. His fourth quarter numbers were very good last year because he's Damian Lillard. This is what he does. His three-point shooting walks in, immediate fit. All the reasons we talked about him being the perfect trade target last summer when it didn't happen, he's still the same player, right? He's just a year older, but he still brings a lot of those same qualities to the table. To me, it would be a no-brainer. And to the point that you made earlier about, well, maybe it's just time for the Heat to go young anyway, if this really is sort of a last hurrah in the Jimmy Butler era and we expect him to opt out and be a free agent next year. Mm-hmm. Damian Lillard has value to this roster with or without Jimmy Butler. If you trade for Damian Lillard and Jimmy Butler walks away this summer for nothing, you still have Damian Lillard and Bam Adebayo. You still have two top 20 players in the NBA. Right? That's still a valuable thing to have this roster. They're not exclusive, or it doesn't like they're not tied to each other, Jimmy Butler and Damian Lillard. Like just because one door opens doesn't mean the other, or one door closes doesn't mean the other one has to close, in other words. So to me, depending on what the price was, it would be worth maybe kicking the tires on Damian Lillard. Now, what are the Milwaukee Bucks looking for in a hypothetical trade? I would imagine youth, right? Definitely somebody younger. Tyler Hero could make some sense for them in terms of, hey, we just need somebody else who could score the basketball outside of Giannis. Another guy who could be a threat from 3-point range, but is younger, and we can sort of rebuild with that player. I think Terry Rozier would make sense for them as a point guard. If you're going to lose Damian Lillard, you've already don't have Drew Holiday because you traded him in that Damian Lillard trade. You would probably need another point guard on the roster. Rozier makes some sense. They would obviously be asking for somebody like Nikola Jovic or Jaime Jaquez. I don't know the ins and outs of that sort of negotiation. Obviously, hypothetically, it's not even happening.
Want Ware to replace
Maybe they would want Khalil Ware to replace Brook Lopez. Great point. Like all of these things could be on the table, and that would be up to the Heat to figure it out. But in terms of Damian Lillard's fit on Miami, it does make a lot of sense. Maybe you're able to maximize this championship window for Jimmy Butler, make a little bit of a run here in the Eastern Conference, because I do think a team with Jimmy, Bam, Damian Lillard, and whatever's left after that Lillard trade, assuming that it's not all gone, which I don't think it would be all gone. I don't think Lillard has that kind of value on the trade market.
Yeah.
That's a team that can compete in the East. I have no doubt about it. Coached by Eric Spoelstra, there is no doubt that team could compete with Boston for the Eastern Conference crown.
Right.
I have no doubt about that. So it could be worth doing it, depending, again, on what the price is, what you have to give up. So it doesn't surprise me that Zach Lowe mentioned Damian Lillard's name. We've already probably talked enough about it, but that'll do it for us today, unless you have any other point that you want to make, David, on that.
No, not necessarily. No, we'll see.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.